South Africa losing over 4 billion rand a day due to the blackouts. The power cuts impacting as well how businesses are able to operate. And of course, as we talk about the president not going over to Davos, the World Economic Forum, it's starting to deter investors. So how worried is the various sectors around the country? The impact of a stagnant economy also will eventually be felt by both you and I. Business Unity SA Environment and Energy Manager Happy Khambule back with us on ENCA. Happy, hello to you as well. And this cannot look good from a global perspective. But when we start talking about how much money we are losing, it almost brings tears to your eyes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, good morning. And yeah, I think one of the biggest problems right now is that how do we stem the outflow of confidence and also the resources that have been already allocated in ensuring that we've got at least businesses that are working. So it's quite a problem. The longer it continues, the worse the situation is going to get. And we're hoping that we're going to find a solution quite soon.
How difficult is it to sell a country, do you think, Happy, when it comes to trying to explain away stage 6 load shedding? We know that the president was meant to go to WEF. It's not happening. He's not going over now. But how do you try and explain this away to potential investors? It must be impossible.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those conditions that used to be temporary, but now it is one of those things that are essentially endemic in South Africa. There are aspects of how you try to explain that actually the problem is not just that we don't have electricity, but the problem is that we're also going through a global transition. We're going through a national transition in terms of how we produce electricity. But on top of that, even the electricity supply industry itself, which is a key area of growth and investment, is undergoing reform. So there are push and pull factors that contribute to how you can explain the story of why we're stuck in this situation. But well, fortunately and unfortunately, there are opportunities that are presented by a crisis like this that can help us, at least in the future and in the midterm. But in the immediate term, it is quite worrisome.
No, good heavens, I can see people jumping up and down. As you said, there's opportunities here somewhere. You're going to have to justify that for me, Happy.
Yes. So for example, as we're undergoing a electricity reform structure, what tends to happen is that we start to look at the different types of technologies and arrangements that need to be present in order to create the kind of safeguards that are there. Traditionally, we would have Eskom make all the decisions in terms of the procurement that has been allocated within the ambit of Eskom's work, but that's no longer going to be the case, right? So we've got certain types of regulatory reforms that have come out, like your Schedule 2 under the Electricity Amendment Act, a Regulation Act, which has removed the embedded generation cap. So companies and people used to be able to only produce electricity to a certain amount that they can use for themselves without having to register to license it. So outside of that, as a reason to be able to stem the fact that we don't have enough electricity, you start to have reforms that are basically saying that you can produce electricity for yourself at any particular rate at this point in time, and as long as you use it for yourself, you don't need to go through the rigorous process of licensing that particular facility as a power station. You just have to register it. And then there are various other forms of opportunities that started to present themselves that speak to how, if you're building a power station, or if someone is building a power station, they can then start to contribute or invest in some of the point connection infrastructure that is required. So you're removing all of that burden from Eskom. In doing that, you are creating new industries and allowing opportunities to come out. We would have loved that situation to come out in a way where it's managed, where we don't have insecurity of supply. But these things are happening at the same time.
Yeah, and one could argue, though, we shouldn't have been in this position to begin with. But I suppose if you are looking down the tunnel and there is some light at the end of the tunnel when there isn't blackouts, I suppose that's one way of looking at it. You're the energy manager for BUSA as well. I can't help but get your thoughts then, Happy, on this talk around moving Eskom to the Energy and Mineral Resources Department. Some suggesting it's not going to make a difference. Government's going to just loot more money. But what's your thoughts? Could that make a difference?
I mean, the only thing we really do need is to ensure that we're implementing the plans that we have. We're stuck in a situation where we're having rolling blackouts. We're still not sure about what other energy procurement programs are still going to be applied, who's going to be participating, because we've got the stop and start kind of approach, and we're not implementing what we've put down. So regardless of where Eskom sits, regardless of who the market players are and who's the decision maker, we really just need to implement. If we implement what is necessarily there in our plans, we will be far ahead in increasing our own resilience in situations like this. So at this point in time, I take the cautious view that should any change happen, it will take a while. So it's not like we're going to be changing any of the institutional arrangements at this current moment in time. But regardless of whether or not it stays in DPE or goes to DMRE or anywhere else, even after unbundling, we need to implement the plans that are there. That's what we need to do, because they are there for a reason.
I was so looking forward to talking to you, Happy, and I'll tell you why. Because you are also the environment and energy manager at Busa as well. So you know I was going to ask you about car power ship, these ships that were coming in, because there's two sides to this argument. One is the environmental side, and that has been well documented, well reported on here in South Africa. The other side of this, of course, is the country needs the electricity. So your head on a block. Which way would you go with car power ship, environmental or energy? It's in your job title, and I leave that as my last question to you. What would you do?
All right. What would I do? I mean, you've got environmental laws for a reason, and they need to be applied. And any other infrastructure project would have to also fulfill the same requirements. So if the current technology application or applicants are applying to produce power, then let them do so if they meet the necessary requirements. And it doesn't matter who it is, right? It's whether it's coal, whether it's any form of renewable, whether it's nuclear, there are certain rules that are there. Let them be applied, let them then there be compliance. And should there be all those check boxes and also all the authorizations and permits that have been accounted for, then let the power flow. Because right now we need security of supply, but we don't need to break the back of our governance structures as well as our compliance mechanisms in order to get there. They are there for a reason, to ensure that we have those safeguards, and then we can get the necessary technology as well as provision of services.
Yeah, I was always curious to get that answer from someone who sits in environment and energy in South Africa. That must be an interesting portfolio to be part of. Business Unity South Africa Environment and Energy Manager, the Happy Khambule, joining us this morning. Happy, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. All right.